Hi, this is David McCann for WebTNG. I've been asked by several people to review the Getwid add-on for Gutenberg. Getwid is created by MotoPress. They make a well-respected booking plugin, so I wanted to take a look at their Gutenberg blocks add-on. Getwid is available free in the WordPress plugin directory. There is no premium version. You can see here that they have a page on their website with some demos. There are a few video tutorials on YouTube. They're kind of short, but a couple of them are pretty good. There's a Facebook group that's not super active, but the developers and people from MotoPress are there and answer questions, so that's helpful. You can see it's got about more than 20,000 active installs. It's got a 5-star rating, which is good. And if you look, they've got 24 out of about 40 support requests resolved. So the developers are active and interacting, answering questions and helping. And here's a list of blocks. We'll look at these in a few minutes on the site. But I just wanted to point out they do have a theme if you want to use their theme. And they have a quote-unquote style kit, which is really some CSS snippets that you can use to help style the blocks. So that means that they've tried to make it developer friendly. Now I have a testing site here that I've been using for Gutenberg testing. I've got the free Cadence theme. I used the FakerPress plugin to generate a lot of posts, test content. And then I also have a custom post type called books. As we'll see, Getwid has a custom post type block, so I'll use the books custom post type for that. And when you activate Getwid, you get some settings for the plugin and the admin under settings writing, which is kind of an unusual place. I mean, sometimes if a plugin only has a couple settings, they might put it under one of these, but usually they would do their own page. But anyway, you can set the content width. Otherwise, it'll pick it up from the theme. You can add your tokens and keys for third-party services. And then here's a place where you can disable any of the blocks that you don't plan on using. And as I've said in other videos, this is a good practice for add-ons to do, so it helps to keep the Gutenberg editor from getting too overloaded. Okay, if we go now to look at a page I've got here for testing. Here's the list down here, Getwid blocks. You can see there's a large number of them. That's nice. They're very generous in the number of blocks. One thing I noticed though is that they've got kind of these black and white line icons which are very similar to the core ones. Let me show you what I mean. I guess they're a little bolder, but anyway, a lot of add-ons make their icons a little bit different color so that they kind of stand out a little bit more. Not a big thing, it's just something that I noticed. So if we continue to look at the blocks here, you'll see that there are some that you find in a lot of block add-ons like tab and accordion, a heading block, for instance. And then there's some that are a little bit different or more unique. For example, the custom post type block that I mentioned, the content timeline, or image hotspot. So we'll look at some of these so you can see the kinds of features that they have and how they look. One of the first things I look at are the container blocks, the rows and columns, because that's pretty central to being able to create more page builder-like features. Their container block is called a section block. So I'm going to add that in. I'll delete this out. And you can see here, this is a widescreen section, full width with content fixed, or I think that means contained. Here's full width section with content full width. And here's full screen with content fixed. And the first thing that came to my mind was, what about just a regular container that's the length of the content? And you get to that, I guess, by default if you click skip. So you can see there we are in the content. Then these are the buttons we can switch back if we changed our mind. This is to align the content vertically, horizontally. This is to add a background color or an image background. And this is a toggle here, which is kind of interesting. When it's on, you have these padding and margin toggles where you can adjust the padding and margin using your mouse. And so that's pretty nice. If we look on the settings panels here on the side, here again is another place where we can set the width. You can make some settings by device size, set a height for the section, the space between the blocks, the gutter. You can vertically and horizontally align the blocks and content. On the Style tab, we have the background options again. You have color, image, gradient, a slider, and a video. These are the color options. And you have overlay options. You can adjust the padding and margin. And there's a place where you can enter an anchor if you want to create like an on-page menu. So that's the Style tab. Then on the Advanced tab, you have some animation effects, which are nice. You know, bounce in, fade in, zoom in, slide, and so on. And then you can set the duration and the delay. And for this block, the section block, you also have the option for dividers. And okay, so that's the Advanced tab. So this is meant to be a container. So I guess maybe we would add, let's try adding their heading block and test block. Now, one thing I noticed that was a little unusual also here is this is pretty small for a heading. And if I look over here on the settings, the options, it defaults to a span tag, and you have to go in then and change the heading that way. So that's another kind of a little unusual. You would think that it would default to an H2, which is what most of the heading blocks do. And then you have your alignment, bold, italic, or link. And here you can set the typography options, which are nice. And on Style, you can set the color and background. There's padding and margin. So these are pretty standard, and it seems like, you know, some decent options, you know, much nicer than the core block, which has no padding or margin options at all. Okay, so let's go ahead and add maybe an image. Guess we'll add an image box so we can look at that. Let's go to the media library and we'll pick an image. Fill in these areas here for text. Okay, and on this block you have some alignment options and some image hover options, and you can change the image size, replace the image. You can add margin to it, and you could add a link. So that's their image box. Now, one thing I noticed with Getwid plugin is that if you look at their blocks here, they do not have a columns block or a row columns block at all, which is pretty surprising because that's the kind of building block, pardon the pun, for creating page builder like layouts. So with Getwid, this is kind of a big limitation in my mind. Let's look at a couple of other blocks they have here. They have one called Advanced Spacer. I was curious what that is. What's the difference between this spacer and the one that comes in core? And the difference is that you have these options to hide it by device size. So I could see that makes sense because sometimes the amount of padding or margin you need is different on the different device sizes. So there's that. I think another way of doing that might be just to be able to set the height by device size. But anyway, that's the spacer. And then they have this one called a progress bar, which I thought was interesting. You scroll into view, it kind of animates the progress, the amount, the value here that you have set. You can change the bar color if you want to, and the background color. And you can put a heading in here, so we'll just say progress so far. But one thing that I was a little surprised is There's no way here really to change the size of, there are no typography options for this little bit of text that goes on top of the progress bar. So it's a little bit limited, but I can see that being useful maybe if you're trying to show how far you are through a process. And now let's look at a couple of the more advanced blocks. They have a block which is the Hotspot block, image hotspot. This is one, I've seen this a lot like in Beaver Builder or Elementor add-on packs. This is the first one I've seen in a Gutenberg add-on pack. We'll get an image from the media library. We'll use this one, kind of the blind man elephant image. And what we see here is you have a marker on the button bar, marker, edit, and duplicate buttons. And over here you can replace the image, you can set the image size, and this is the tooltip interactive setting, whether it's triggered by mouse hover, a click, or a double click. And then you can change the default icon for the markers. So let's see if we can find a map marker here. Here's one. Okay, you can change the size and spacing. And in style, you can change the marker color. So I'll make it blue, and the opacity. And actually, that's the background. Let's switch. I want to make the icon color blue. And then the tooltip theme, there's default. You can have some animations for the tooltip and the point. You can have it pulse. Let's see what that looks like. Let's add one here. And you can see that's easy to add. You get a pop-up. So we'll say tusk. The elephant is hard and pointy. And we'll give it a URL. And then position, you can do it with these sliders, but that's not very useful here actually. You don't see it here. And you can set the position for the tooltip and its width and the colors. So these are kind of replications of these over here. The difference is that you can choose an individual marker and change its icon and colors. So you can do them kind of all together, or you can set them individually. So that's kind of nice. All right, let's save that one. And this is what we get here. It's got this, you can see it's kind of pulsing. But when you mouse over it, the title is the link here. And so you could click that to go to another page. And you can add these then for each of the blind men. But anyway, what I wanted to do is change the icon color to blue and the background to white. And then I wanted to make it so it doesn't pulse. Okay, so anyway, this is the image hotspot. That was pretty easy to use there. Let's see, I think we can probably try to make this a little bit bigger. Yeah. So it's pretty easy to use. It's pretty nice. That's pretty much all the features I think you'd need. So that's a nice block. Then they have a content timeline block. So let's try that. And here, when you do that, you get two blocks for content. The name of the block, content timeline. I thought it was going to organize my posts on a timeline, but that's not what it does. I'll get a little bit of dummy text here and add that. And when you have the block selected here, timeline block, there's an option to upload an image. And so I thought maybe that replaced this area on the side so you could have your event information or whatever on the timeline and an image on the other side. But it doesn't do that. It puts it above the content that has the title. There's this alignment thing here, and what that does is just switches which side has the picture and title of it. So let me add a couple more here. Okay, so here's our timeline, and you can see as I'm scrolling, this line down the middle follows the scroll. So that's kind of a cool effect. It's not really what I expected for the timeline, but it's kind of interesting. I can see some people might like that. Let's preview what we've got so far here. So here's our container block. There's a progress. Here's our image hotspot. And here's our timeline. Okay. So there's one more thing I want to look at, and that is the custom post type block. So I'll add that. And by default, it's bringing in the posts. And you have the option for the list or the grid. I'll leave it at the list. And here you can set the number of items. If you want pagination, I guess I'll turn that on. Does that show at the bottom here? Yep, okay, there's pagination. And then there are sorting and filtering options. So here you can set the order, ignore sticky posts. You can exclude or include based on taxonomy terms, and which is all kind of pretty standard stuff. And then under display settings, again, you can use list or grid. This is the mouse spacing between the posts. And it has this place here for post template, but the only one available here is default. But here it has this thing where you can create one. So I mentioned before that I have a book custom post type on here. So let's try that, see what we get. Here is our view of the post type. You can see I have a problem. The featured images aren't the right size. I don't have the post meta, and I don't have a read more button. So let's go down to this post template and see if I can create a template, which is kind of a cool feature, another unique thing that I haven't seen in other Gutenberg add-ons. So I'm going to click New here. And I go in to this place where the first thing is to choose a layout. I guess I'll give it a title. Let's call this my template. These are some pre-designed layouts. So I'll try this 2-column with the image on the left. And we can see that it's got these placeholders: featured image, post title, post content, continue reading link. It's using the Gutenberg columns, which are kind of brain dead, but they do have a background color setting, so let's set that. And let's see what options we have when we click on featured image. We can link to the post, and we have these sizes. It doesn't really give us an option for a custom size, so I guess I'll do medium large. And then we have post title, and then title we can set the color and then it links to. For content, we can set whether it's excerpt, the full content, or the number of words on the excerpt, which is nice. And then the continue reading, read more link, basically. You can see there's a place to add more options. If we go and look in the block list, at the bottom there's these post blocks. These are the placeholders. And you can see some of these are on our template already. Okay, I think we can use a button if we wanted a read more button instead. But here's the author, your categories, comments, tags, the date. You can use the featured image as a background instead. There's the option for the meta. So let's add that, and let's move that up. And then on the meta, I don't think this has any tags. So can we remove this? Just gonna hit delete. Okay. And I don't need comments, so I'm going to remove that. I just hit delete, so that was easy. Okay, so now let's go look at those blocks again. And there was one I was interested in, custom field. So I'm adding that. I'm going to put that in here just as a experiment. I know that there is a custom field called author's website. So this is only going to be text. If you had advanced custom fields in image or something like that, that's not going to work here. But I've added that custom field. And so now I'm going to click publish. Okay, I'm going to go back to my editor here and click this update button. See, we only have default, so I'll click update. Here's my template, so that's cool that it found that. And you can see the images are humongo. So what I'm going to do is go back to the template, and I'm going to add a class here. Call it template image. I'm going to update. Okay, now come over to the customizer. I'm going to add some CSS here and publish that. Then we go back into the page here, and let's preview it. Because, the CSS isn't loaded in the editor, that from the customizer. So I have to look at it on the front end. Scroll down here. Okay, so that's pretty good. I think you get the idea. It needs some help here to set the columns. Don't have to be 50%, but You get the idea. It's with some CSS, I think you can get pretty much what you need. Here's the custom field, so that's cool. This is a nice feature. And if we go back into the editor, I'm just going to point out something. I'm going to remove this from here for this because I want to show you a couple of other things here. If you look at the other blocks, we have this recent posts and we have this post carousel, for instance. And I just wanted to point out that this has display settings and you can use your templates. I think we'd have to make it one slide. Maybe that would work better. Yeah. Okay, so we can use our template then that we created in several of the other blocks as well. So the point I'm trying to make is that several of the other blocks have the ability to use this custom template feature. So that's the look at the blocks. In summary and conclusion, I like that the Getwid add-on has the ability to disable blocks that you don't intend to use. Also, it had some interesting blocks like the image hotspot, which was pretty full-featured and a unique offering that I haven't seen in other add-ons. And for me, I think that was one of the standouts in the set. It was easy to use and had about the right number of options. The custom post type block with the ability to create a template was also pretty cool. I like the idea. I like that they had the placeholders and that I could put in a custom field. However, it wasn't quite flexible enough to use on its own. There weren't enough settings for the placeholders, so you would need to add some CSS and maybe some other tweaks to get the result that you wanted. It was nice that you could use the template with other post listing blocks. And things like that custom post type block and the GitHub style snippets indicate to me that they want the plugin to be developer friendly. There are some YouTube videos, but there's no written documentation. There were a few things that were unusual or a little limited. The placement of the plugin settings on the writing settings page instead of on its own page seemed a little odd. For me, it was hard to distinguish the block icons from the core blocks. But those two are small things. More significant was that the section container block doesn't have any option for columns or settings that would allow you to create more advanced layouts. The limitations means that Getwid isn't sufficient on its own to get page builder layout-like features, but would need to be used with another Gutenberg add-on. So I don't think I'll be using the Getwid add-on myself, but after taking a look at it, I can see why it appeals to its users. So that's my look at the Getwid Gutenberg Blocks add-on. There's a text version of the video available on the WebTNG website, along with other walkthroughs and tutorials and resources. I hope you found the video useful. Thank you for watching.